Think you know the Wild West? Think again. Behind the legendary tales of rugged cowboys and relentless outlaws is a shadowy, forgotten side of history. The Old West was built on hardship, bloodshed, and stories that rarely get told. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on haunting truths that challenge everything you thought you knew. You'll meet the real people who braved the frontier, heroes, villains, and the countless souls in between. From their grueling battles to quiet moments of triumph, we'll explore the moments that defined an era. So saddle up and prepare to see the Wild West like never before. And before we hit the trail, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. 17. Dangerous drinks. Whiskey was the lifeblood of many frontier towns, but the stuff they drank wasn't your smooth, barrel-aged bourbon. It went by names like 40 Rods, Tarantula Juice, and Lightning, labels that hinted at just how deadly they were. These weren't just strong, they were chemical cocktails. Ingredients ranged from turpentine to tobacco oil, even strychnine, a literal poison. One sip was enough to make you gag. A second shot? Only if you wanted to test your luck. Still, after a few rounds, the pain faded and the drinkers either passed out or staggered into trouble. Saloons were isolated, and supply chains barely existed. With no regulations, saloon keepers improvised wildly, mixing whatever was on hand just to keep the booze flowing. Was it creative? Absolutely. Was it safe? Not even close. These weren't drinks for savoring. They were survival fuel. So next time you raise a glass, be glad it doesn't taste like snake venom and gasoline. 16. Unfights. Everyone knows the legendary shootout at the OK Corral. But here's the twist. It didn't actually happen there. The real firefight took place around the corner on Fremont Street, not inside the corral gates. The infamous 30-second gun battle involved 8 men, the Earp brothers, Morgan, Virgil, and Wyatt, plus Doc Holliday, squaring off against the Clanton and McLaurin brothers. Despite its short duration, it was pure chaos. When the smoke cleared, 3 cowboys were dead, and 3 of the lawmen were wounded. Wyatt Earp came out unscathed, but the town of Tombstone was never the same. The Earps claimed they were defending order. The cowboys claimed they were being harassed. What made the moment unforgettable wasn't just the gunfire. It was what it represented: law against lawlessness, family against outlaws, and a town caught in the middle. The Wild West wasn't built on peace treaties. It was built in 30-second shootouts like this one. 15. Giant cannibals. In the deserts of what's now Nevada, Native American tribes like the Northern Paiute passed down chilling tales of monstrous, red-haired giants. These beings, known as the Ka or Sia, were feared not just for their towering size and fiery manes, but because they were cannibals. According to legend, these beasts roamed the high deserts long before settlers arrived, hunting humans and striking terror into every corner of the land. The Paiutes believed the Sia's blood-red hair came from eating a strange water plant. Their presence was more than myth. It was a terrifying reality the tribes claimed to battle. But the Paiute people didn't run. They fought back. As told by Paiute activist Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins, the tribe's warriors crafted a brilliant plan. Using their deep knowledge of the terrain, they drove the Sia into a massive cave. Then, they lit it ablaze, sealing the cannibals inside with smoke and flame. That was the last anyone saw of them. Gone in a blaze, their reign of terror extinguished. Whether myth or memory, the story of the red-haired giants remains one of the West's most haunting legends. 14. Hidden gold. You might have heard of the Camel Red Ghost legend, but while that one may be more fable than fact, the Wild West had no shortage of bizarre tales. And the ones that truly stuck? Stories of hidden treasure and vanishing gold mines. During the gold and silver rushes of the 1800s, dreamers from the East surged westward, hungry for fortune. Thousands came, some bold, others desperate, hoping to strike it rich. Few did. Most returned broke. But those rare success stories kept hope alive. That's when the rumors began. Talk of miners burying their fortunes to protect them from thieves. Some swore they saw maps. Others claimed to know the exact canyon or hillside where gold was stashed. And just like that, legends of lost mines were born. To this day, people comb the hills with metal detectors and old clues, hunting what may never have existed. But maybe, just maybe, those hidden riches are still out there, buried beneath centuries of dust, waiting for a lucky soul to uncover them. 13. Real cowboy hats. When we picture cowboys, we see the wide-brimmed, high-crowned 10-gallon hat, thanks to decades of Hollywood glamour. But real cowboys of the 1800s? They wore something entirely different. The original cowboy hat was the Boss of the Plains, created by hatmaker John Stetson. It wasn't flashy, it was functional. Settlers before Stetson wore hats that did little to protect them. Straw ones wilted in rain, fur and wool were stifling in summer, and silk offered no protection at all. But Stetson's design was revolutionary. Made from waterproof nutria fur, it had a rounded crown and a modest, flat brim that kept the rain off and the sun out. Cowboys loved it not just for its durability, but for its practicality. It could be flipped over and used as a bucket for water or grain, and while it cost around $5, nearly $75 today, it was tough enough to outlast rough trails and rougher weather. The Boss of the Plains wasn't made to be iconic. It was made to survive the elements, and it did. Long before it was a fashion statement, it was a symbol of resilience. Crash at Crush. In the late 1800s, a bold railroad executive named William Crush had a flair for the dramatic and a thirst for publicity. In 1894, he devised a spectacle that would make headlines and hopefully bring in funding for the Missouri, Kansas, and Texas Railroad, also known as the Katy Line. His idea? A staged train crash. Two massive 35-ton steam locomotives hurtling toward each other at full speed. To make it happen, he built an entire pop-up town in Texas, boldly named it Crush, and turned it into the second largest city in the state overnight. More than 40,000 spectators flocked to the site to witness what he promised would be the event of the century. And it was, for all the wrong reasons. As the trains collided, the explosion was more violent than anyone expected. Boilers burst, shrapnel flew, 2 people were killed, and hundreds were injured in the chaos. Though the event was considered a financial success due to the enormous turnout, the devastation horrified railroad officials. Crush was immediately fired, his reckless gamble too costly for the company to stomach. The fiery stunt would go down in history as the infamous crash at Crush, a haunting reminder of how far some would go for attention. When we think of the Civil War, our minds often drift to Gettysburg and Antietam, but one of its most pivotal battles took place in the arid lands of New Mexico. In 1862, Confederate General Henry Hopkins Sibley had grand ambitions. His plan? March north along the Rio Grande, seize Colorado's gold mines, and fund the Confederacy's rebellion. He expected little resistance. But the Union had other plans. The 1st Regiment of Colorado Volunteers caught wind of Sibley's movements and made a grueling 400-mile march in just 13 days to join Union forces near Santa Fe. The two sides clashed in what would be dubbed the Gettysburg of the West. For 2 brutal days, gunfire echoed across the desert. Then came the turning point. Union troops, aided by locals familiar with the terrain, snuck behind enemy lines and destroyed the Confederate supply wagons. With no food, ammunition, or reinforcements, Sibley's army crumbled. They limped back to Texas, never to return. This single battle crushed Confederate dreams of Western expansion and preserved the Union's grip on the frontier. Chewing tobacco was normal. Chewing tobacco might seem like a dirty habit today, but in the Old West, it was practically a way of life, especially under the scorching sun. Working long hours in dry, dusty fields left mouths parched, and chewing tobacco kept saliva flowing. It was both relief and ritual. Every saloon had a metal or ceramic spittoon near the bar. But these weren't just bar fixtures. You'd find them in general stores, post offices, even banks. Picture a finely decorated bowl filled with sticky brown gobs of spit and tobacco. Charming, right? Back then, it was as normal as a coffee cup is today. People chewed constantly, especially men, and spitting was expected. Nobody batted an eye. The sight and smell might horrify modern noses, but in the gritty Wild West, it was part of the soundtrack of the day. Boots on wood, piano keys clinking, and the ever-present ting of tobacco hitting brass. 9. Lack of toilet paper. Toilet paper, so basic, yet such a luxury in the 1800s. Before it became a household staple, folks had to make do with far less comfortable alternatives. Outhouses were the norm, wooden shacks built over pits, reeking in the sun and swarming with bugs. The experience? Let's just say it wasn't for the faint of heart. Imagine sitting in a dark shed filled with the stench of waste, flies buzzing around your ears, and no real toilet paper in sight. What did they use instead? Leaves, corn cobs, grass, whatever nature offered. These primitive solutions were rough, unsanitary, and downright painful. The introduction of commercial toilet paper in the mid-1800s was a revolution in comfort, but it would take decades before it became widely accessible across the frontier. Until then, going to the bathroom was a daily gamble between survival and splinters. 8. Murdered outlaw displayed in carnival. Elmer McCurdy's story doesn't end with a failed robbery. It becomes one of the strangest post-mortem tales in Wild West history. In 1911, at just 31 years old, Elmer attempted to rob a train in Oklahoma, thinking it was carrying a fortune. Instead, he made off with a measly $46. His criminal career was short-lived. Police gunned him down not long after. But the bizarre part came after his death. With no one to claim the body, a local undertaker embalmed him with arsenic and propped him up for viewing. Then, things took a turn. A carnival operator tricked the undertaker into handing over Elmer's corpse, claiming to be his long-lost brother. The outlaw's body was mummified and put on display as the bandit who wouldn't give up. Over the years, Elmer's corpse toured the country, passing from carnival to sideshow to wax museum. At one point, someone rebranded him as a drug addict for extra shock value. Eventually, he ended up hanging in a California funhouse. It wasn't until 1976, during the filming of a TV episode of The $6 Million Man, that a crew member discovered Elmer wasn't a mannequin when his arm literally broke off. Finally, in 1977, he was buried in Guthrie, Oklahoma, 66 years after. 7. Photo shoots of dead outlaws. In the lawless days of the Wild West, justice wasn't just served, it was shown. When infamous outlaws were finally caught or killed, townsfolk didn't just want to read about it, they wanted proof. And in a strange twist of history, this desire gave birth to a morbid but effective tradition: the outlaw photo shoot. Newspapers often exaggerated these criminals' exploits, turning them into dark legends. So when an outlaw met his end, the authorities made a spectacle of it. Bodies were cleaned up, posed, and photographed. Sometimes alone, sometimes grouped together, lined up for the camera like a macabre trophy collection. These weren't respectful memorials, they were warnings. The photographs were published and posted publicly, reinforcing the message that crime wouldn't end in glory. It ended on a slab. 6. Town full of widows. In the harsh desert of Nevada, one town earned a name as haunting as its legacy: the Widowmaker. DeLamar was a small mining settlement near Monkey Wrench Gulch, and life there came with a deadly cost. Sure, the Old West was filled with dangers: bandits, disease, wars. But DeLamar's greatest threat came from the very ground beneath it. The town's gold mine was its heart, and the mill nearby was constantly churning, breaking down quartz rock and releasing clouds of fine silica dust. Invisible, deadly, and everywhere. This dust filled the lungs of miners day after day, leading to a fatal disease now known as silicosis. Young men came chasing fortune, but many never made it past their 30s. They coughed their lives away, leaving behind families and a staggering number of widows. 5. Planned extinction of buffaloes. Once, the American plains thundered with the hooves of up to 30 million bison. These creatures were vital to the Native American way of life, providing food, clothing, and tools. But to the U.S. military in the 1800s, they were more than animals. They were a target, A deliberate plan unfolded, aimed at destroying native livelihoods by wiping out their greatest resource. Soldiers and hired hunters fanned out across the plains. Trains full of passengers fired rifles from windows just for sport. Piles of buffalo bones were stacked like mountains. One officer infamously said, "Buffalo Bill Cody became a symbol of this campaign, slaughtering over 4,000 bison in just 2 years." By 1889, the once massive herds were nearly gone. Only 256 buffalo remained in captivity. Thanks to later conservation efforts, the species was pulled back from the brink. Today, up to 200,000 bison roam North America again. 4. Extreme violence. Hollywood might exaggerate the Wild West's wildness, but make no mistake, some towns were as dangerous as any war zone. Take Dodge City, Kansas, a place so lawless it became infamous across the frontier. Between 1876 and 1885, Dodge earned its reputation the hard way. The numbers tell the story. 165 adults murdered per 100,000 residents annually. That meant anyone living there had a 1 in 61 chance of being killed in a given year. And it wasn't just shootouts between cowboys and outlaws. Bar fights, robberies, and drunken brawls often ended in bloodshed. To compare, in 2020, the most violent city in the world, Los Cabos, Mexico, had a murder rate of 138 per 100,000. Dodge City beat that nearly 150 years ago. So while not every town was a gunslinging movie set, places like Dodge show that the Old West truly lived up to its name: raw, reckless, and soaked in danger. 3. Lack of delicious food. Romanticizing frontier meals might sound fun, but the reality was anything but gourmet. The Old West dinner table wasn't a place of flavor, it was a place of necessity. Meals were dictated by whatever was on hand, and that often meant repetition, bland ingredients, and rough textures. Breakfast might seem tolerable. A few boiled eggs, fried potatoes, maybe some cornbread or stew. But dinner? That was a test of stomach strength. Picture a plate of boiled mutton, a slab of cave-aged cheese with a pungent bite, or even sautéed calf's feet. And for dessert, a dense pudding that was more survival food than sweet treat. Cooking was primitive. Settlers used iron pots, open fires, frying pans, and makeshift ovens. The seasons controlled what was available, and long winters often meant dried or salted supplies. Cowboys fared even worse. Out on the trail, they relied on canned beans, jerky, rock-hard biscuits, and whatever dried fruit could survive the heat. Coffee was a rare luxury that kept them going, even if it tasted like burnt mud. Very notorious outlaws. If the Wild West had a villainous poster child, it might be John Wesley Hardin, the infamous Texas gunslinger with a hair-trigger temper. Trouble seemed to follow him like a shadow from an early age. By 14, he had already tried to stab a man. At 15, he reportedly killed a freed slave and then gunned down 3 soldiers who came to arrest him. In his own words, Hardin claimed to have killed 44 men, though historians believe the real number might be closer to 20. Still, even at that lower count, he was a walking storm of violence. During his time in Abilene, Kansas, he crossed paths with the famous lawman Wild Bill Hickok. Strangely, they got along, possibly because Hickok didn't yet realize Hardin was a wanted man. That truce didn't last long. Number 1. Family of serial killers. When people think of the Wild West, they often imagine rugged cowboys, dusty shootouts, and daring bandits. But hidden among the tumbleweeds and prairies were darker figures, like the Bender family, one of the first known serial killer clans in American history. Their story isn't one of banditry. It's a chilling tale of deception, murder, and mystery. In 1871, a quiet group of German immigrants settled in Leavenworth County, Kansas. The Benders built a modest homestead that doubled as a general store and an inn for weary travelers. It had all the makings of a frontier rest stop, a barn, corral, and a well out back. But behind its ordinary appearance lurked unspeakable horror. The family consisted of John Bender Sr., his grim wife, Elvira, their talkative son John Jr., and a woman named Kate, presented as his wife, or possibly his sister.